Welcome everybody. We welcome our two speakers in today. I'll read their bios in one minute here. Hopefully everybody has heard the housekeeping tips. So I think hopefully pretty much the majority are familiar by now with Zoom and the other platforms. I think it's appropriate before we get started though this morning, if maybe we have a moment of silence for a great friend that our area lost last night. Will County Executive Larry Walsh. Larry was a great friend of the chamber and a great friend to many. Not only was he a respected politician, but a respected family man, father, grandfather, brother to many. And Larry's mark, especially here at the chamber, certainly does not go unnoticed. Larry was awarded last November at our gala with an award of excellence, and his work with us has certainly opened so many doors that this chamber would not be in the position it has in Washington and Springfield. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the relationship with Larry, even though as a chamber of commerce we don't always have the same viewpoints as certain ones, but I think we always get along and have solid conversations and respect others. And Larry was the type of person that anybody could talk with, get along with, and walk away and say that person is a friend. So if we can just take a quick moment of silence for Larry. All right, thank you very much. With that said, we'll roll right into our bios, and then we will start up our session for the day. So first of all, we have with us Natalie Manley, and Natalie has been a member of the Illinois House of Representatives since 2013 and represents Illinois' 98th House District, which includes parts of Joliet, Crest Hill, Romeoville, Bolingbrook, and Plainfield Township. Representative Manley is also a certified public accountant and has been on staff at Wermer Rogers, Duran, Ruzan, Will County's oldest public accounting firm, for over 20 years. She received her bachelor's from the University of St. Francis and master's in organizational leadership, public administration from Lewis University. Representative Manley was appointed assistant majority leader of the Illinois House of Representatives in January 2019. Welcome, Representative Manley. Also with us today is Jennifer Bertino-Tarrant. Jennifer was elected to the office of Illinois State Senate of the 49th Legislative District in November of 2012. The 49th District includes Plainfield as well as portions of Joliet, Romeoville, Bolingbrook, Shorewood, and Crest Hill. Jennifer is a lifelong educator and passionate education advocate, working with the youth of Will County for almost 20 years in the local schools. She also grew up around her family's small business. She obtained the title of 2018 Edgar Fellow and served on numerous statewide commissions and task force. Bertino-Tarrant has been honored by various business, education, and professional organizations for her work in the community in the Illinois General Assembly. So welcome again as well to Senator Bertino-Tarrant. We're gonna get started. Today's session is going to be a ongoing dialogue, kind of a back and forth question and topic discussion. So again, if you have any questions, please add them right away, and I will bring them up to both of our speakers. So we're gonna get started. And the first thing that we want to talk about this morning was to have each of our legislators kind of just give us an update and talk a little bit about their experience going all the way back to mid-March when the pandemic started, what it was like to have the disruption and being away from Springfield, and maybe talk then too a little bit about how they were able to still work with their virtual working groups. Who would like to volunteer to go first this morning?
Go ahead, leader. Am I unmuted? Okay.
We gotcha.
Says my internet connection is unstable, that and many other things. The advent of COVID-19 and the governor's orders to institute stay-at-home orders and things like that have impacted the General Assembly in ways that none of us ever anticipated. We kind of were in shock. I mean, I think I could speak for most people when you think about who would have ever guessed this would happen. And I'm getting kind of tired of saying that. Who would have ever guessed this would happen with any, all the events of the past week. But so public health being number one, and I think we've done a really good job. I support the governor in his and feel sincerely that he cares about the public health. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but he has never given me an indication that he has any other ulterior motive, and he's been criticized for listening and taking kind of the brunt of the opinions of epidemiologists and scientists and doctors, but I have a lot of faith in the professionals. So, we didn't go back to follow our normal session, and about 2 weeks, I think we waited to see if something, not knowing what this would be like, we waited to see if something would make, maybe not plague us. Can you see me okay? See me okay? Okay. But when we were aware that we could not get together, that it would be unsafe for us to be together in the close quarters that we have while we're in session, we decided to formulate many working groups. I was on several of them, the Child Welfare Working Group, the Food Accessibility Working Group, Healthcare and Human Service Working Group. And these groups were charged with a specific task, and that was to address what COVID was doing in those categories in the state of Illinois. And from the groups, we were supposed to come back with, oh, look how cute. Kelly, she is so cute. Come back, look at how cute this little girl is. Hi! She's like a mini me. Look how sweet. So we were charged with coming back with recommendations based on the experiences in our districts and with special attention to our budget restraints. I don't think anybody's shocked to hear that because of the lack of revenue, we knew this was going to be a nightmare. But we were able to do a few things, and the working groups met. I was constantly in this type of platform, Zoom, other platforms, lots of phone calls. The work never stopped. And before we were called back on, I think it was the 22nd of May, we had all submitted our recommendations and weaved them into several pieces of legislation that we did vote on. So they were productive, they were frustrating. This is a really trying time for everybody, but we were able to do a lot with the working groups and then come back to Springfield on the 22nd and get some things done. Senator?
Yeah, thank you. We had a very similar routine, maybe not as many committees. And again, these were bipartisan groups, so we were all involved in the process. And again, the focus of these working groups was very clear. It was to prioritize things that we had to look at to get through this year and this year's budget. So we looked at things, some of the needs of local government because of the pandemic. We looked at funding because of the pandemic. We looked at sunset dates and things that we needed to ensure were completed by March 31st because otherwise things would stop. Now, much like Leader Manley, everything was done via Zoom. We all experienced this. We'd be on the phone from 9 to 5, or on our computers 9 to 5, and then after that, it was even more. So I kind of joke that there was no boundaries during this time. You could be on a meeting at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., whatever worked. And I found the working groups, again, very productive. I would think in the Senate, they both sides would say that, and we heard that numerous times on the Senate floor that we appreciated the conversation. It was a little unique this year because obviously a lot of the negotiations would have happened face to face and made it a little more difficult this way. I think we all were resolved this year that while I think some people would have put up more fights on certain issues, things we wanted, things we didn't want, that the circumstances did not allow for that. And a lot of it required smaller groups to do the negotiation and then come back to us and share. Outside of the budget and the local government and some of the other deadline issues, gaming did become, at first I did not think it was going to go through. The thought was that we were not going to be able to do it. But obviously because it was such a push for our vertical projects, many of the capital projects that people here in our community have asked for, that became towards the last 4 days a priority. And while some people think, well, you push things through and yeah, it happens, sometimes you get your most productive work done in the final days because people want a end product. So very interesting experience. I found it I think it was even a little more stressful, truthfully. Again, there was a lot of wait time in Springfield. We couldn't get together. We couldn't see our colleagues. So we were in the chamber and they kept us in our offices. So a little different than what the House faced, but overall, I don't think what we did, obviously the budget was not perfect. We can all find flaws in things. But you know, I left Springfield satisfied for under the circumstances to be able to accomplish things that most people wanted to see.
All right, thank you. Leader Manley, anything that you want to add on that, your experience over those four or so days of the special session? You guys were uprooted and had a new home for a couple of days there. How was that experience, and how was it able to work and get things done in a manner that, you know, totally not used to?
It was pretty surreal, actually. We were at the Bank of Springfield Convention Center, high security, protesters. I didn't get to talk. We sat at 6-foot banquet tables that were 6 feet or more apart from each other. I presided over the House the second day of session, and it was different. You know, it's different than when you're in the chamber. The lighting was different. It was hard to see things. I had to ask a colleague from the other side of the aisle to assume everybody's doing the best they can because things were grinding slowly. It wasn't, we're kind of spoiled with our immediate answers and our ability to get things done quicker. It was technology. It was the proximity of our location. It was being able to try to hear people through masks. It was a lot. Walking on that concrete floor was brutal. Took me a couple days to get right. But all in all, it was well done. And so far, none of us have tested positive for the virus. Somebody at the Bank of Springfield Center, a worker, did test positive. So all of you that are family people or have aging parents or have maybe a medical condition that you wouldn't want yourself exposed to that, you can imagine how unhappy that made us. But so far, so good. I haven't heard of anything. But also something interesting was the speaker was on the floor most of the time. He sat there like a trooper the whole time. Usually, you know, the chamber, his office is right outside the House chamber. And so he's not often on the floor, as Leader Durkin from the minority party is not often on the floor, but they were both there a lot. So you had a chance to interact with him in a social distancing way. And we had a member expelled for the day for not putting a mask on. I'm sure you all saw that. It was done very respectfully. He was very, there was no arguing, there was no fighting. He was treated well and said he would not wear his mask that day. He left, got his whatever he wanted to get out of that, and he came back the next day with a mask on. So you take from that what you will. So, but all in all, it was long, it was grueling, but we got it done, and I'm glad that so many people. It's pretty amazing what they were able to pull off with that many people.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll truly be an experience to remember for quite some time for everybody involved, and an unpleasant surprise at the end, knowing that somebody was a virus carrier in close proximity. So, so if we can, let's move on to the budget. Senator Bertino-Tarrant started bringing that up a little bit. So, Leader Manley, well, we've got you on the microphone here. If we can just kind of flow right into that, then talk a little bit about overall, the overall aspects, all 42 billion of it, the big picture. Maybe if you can compare a little bit to, previous years. I know not every year, previous years going back the last
I don't
couple
know how
years.
you can. I don't know how you can compare it.
Normal.
Yeah.
But maybe some of the good and the bad that came out result-wise because of the different way of putting everything together.
Well, I guess the first comparison I would make, in my time in the legislature, we could go 700 and some odd days without a budget is far worse than this, but this is bad. And we all knew that going in. We're going to take a hit. It's like any business owner that knows that their business has been impacted. Now you try to put together a budget to get through the rest of the year, and then what's not knowing what the next year will bring. We're being told there's going to be a spike again in COVID. Everybody's running around without their masks on. I'm concerned about that. And how is that going to affect business, right? How are you going to put your budgets together? And so we went in there and had a budget that, and I'm going to go through some of my notes here. It was crafted with the COVID-19 crisis in mind. The pandemic has affected our families and our programs and the resources like nothing else that we've ever experienced. And that when we were in the Rauner years, I hate to say it that way, but during the round, it sounds like the wonder years. I wondered a lot during those years. A lot of our spending is either by consent decree or court order. And so there were programs and things being funded automatically that's provided in those two ways. But there were other things. We're always, with I forgot what the last number was. I don't know how many million people are out of work right now, but a lot of people have now moved into where they've lost their health insurance and now they need the state Medicaid insurance. And so we increased funding for Medicaid and fully funded unemployment, recognizing the need for that, considering the layoffs and furloughs. 719 million in new funding for public health. Wouldn't it be great if we had, I wish for a day when we can be proactive. So now we realize how important public health is. And we got to play catch up. We're forced to have to catch up on some of the things. And I don't know if any of your employees have been furloughed or you've had to lay off people, but this is their likely, many people, this is their only avenue for healthcare. And we know how important that is. So 719 million went for new funding of public health, including 416 million for COVID-19 testing and other services being performed by local health providers. I'm going to leave all the education things to Jennifer because, as you know, she is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and she is my education expert. I go to her for everything. Nobody knows the field and all the nuances of education like Senator Bertino-Tarrant. Seniors money, just a lot of things. I mean, we've seen the effects of not having funding in our nursing homes and those facilities. We've imagined the level of stress, and I'm sure all of you can imagine this, the stress on systems, not only the Department of Children and Family Services, but also those providers for domestic violence. Those problems didn't vaporize. In fact, COVID has exacerbated them and have put people in danger. If I had a magic wand, none of that would be going on, but we have to understand that that's a reality for some people. And we made our full pension payment. So the virus has infected our state budget and our ability to fund programs. And so we did the best we could with that. I'll let Senator Bertino-Tarrant talk about whatever she wants and then cover the education piece.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add, some of this, just kind of accentuate some of the things that, Natalie said. This is a budget that's about $1 billion less than what the governor proposed. Revenue right now, obviously, was as well, was not a guessing game, but a guessing game. We listened to the advice of the governor's office, the Department of Revenue. So, and like anyone, you do the best you can. So we knew it was going to be unbalanced. So our goal was to preserve as much as possible. People asked if we made cuts. That's always the first thing that people go to. What did you cut? What did you cut? I can tell. I sat on about 3 or 4. I was not part of the budget working group, but I invited myself in, and they were gracious to let me listen in. And I can tell you right now, nobody offered cuts. There was not an appetite from the governor's office. There was not an appetite, Democrats, not even an appetite from the Republicans to say this is where we need to cut right now. I think the whole goal was to preserve. Natalie mentioned some of the services, and where any of the increases came, it was all service-based. DHS was probably the biggest, DHFS was probably the biggest one, Department of Family and Health Services. Obviously, this is a very vital time. We needed to ramp up the people in our community, and that is where the funding went. These aren't things that win us, gold stars at all. We recognize that. We recognize the position that we are in. But, I stand firm believing that, government is here to provide services for people. We have to be good partners with everyone. But that is obviously was the priorities to make sure that people were not our most vulnerable populations. And that, when I say increases in DCFS, it was the veteran services, our senior services. That's really where all the focus was at. Ideally, we would have liked to continue to put more money in education that we know directly impacts our property taxes, but it just was not. It was not possible. We were able to preserve, and for that, we felt that was a benefit. I'm going to address the 800-pound gorilla in the room too. That's through this budget. The one thing that was mentioned was that legislators received raises, and to me, that was just a spin and a protection for the people to say that they didn't vote for a budget that gave our local governments the money they asked for. 100%, we funded what they needed. We gave our schools exactly what they needed. We did not get a raise. It was appropriated as zero. They wanted us to say the words, we aren't getting a raise. But again, that was just a showpiece. So that, unfortunately, that got kind of clouded in all this, because again, we had every single, obviously, agency just saying, please help us maintain. And for the most part, we were able to do that. And so I walk away with that. Yes, does it leave we needed to borrow money. We understand that. We recognize that was not ideal. But the only suggestion we heard from our colleagues on the other side was, let's hold off on this budget till we get a better idea of what our revenue is going to be. And we know coming back and trying to get a supermajority, maybe it's a little easier in the Senate, but not so hard, not so easy in the House. I always compare this to when people say, why you can't get things done and why is this so difficult? Most of our local boards are 7, 8 people, 6, 7, 8 people. Getting 6, 7, 8 people to in the same region to comply, in the same community to comply, is a whole lot easier than getting 59 senators representing very diverse areas, 180 state representatives, all vying for what's important to the community. And I sometimes feel overwhelmed that I am almost impressed that we can get anything done, because you know, you go 20 miles south or 20 miles north from here, and those people are demanding very different things. So again, we all work with budgets. We want, our role is to help as many people as possible. So is it perfect? No. But again, I did not leave session thinking, oh crap.
Well, that's good, I guess.
Can I
You
just
may have a different opinion there.
No. I just want to say in the rhetoric that followed session with regard to our pay increases, we were told when we got there we were going to do necessary legislation, nothing more, and get in and get out for public health, for the health of our constituents, our families, everyone. And you can do it two ways. You can bring a bill that says we're not going to take a COLA, or you can zero fund the line item. So in the budget, we zero funded the line item. And that's how we took care of that. As the senator said, LGDF got 100% funding, and that directly impacts our property taxes at the end of the day. So instead of doing the 90% or even less, we put it up to 100. So we tried to address certain things, trying to anticipate some fallout. And we did, Jennifer, we did fully fund. We put the $350 million into did we do that for the evidence-based?
No, we did not. We preserved it. No one lost any money, but we were not able to put the additional.
Flat funded. Everything was flat funded.
Flat funded. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those are my notes while you were talking.
I'll ask you a real quick follow-up question from the audience. One of our attendees has brought up the area of mental health. I feel that we need to catch up on funding mental health. Any possibilities down the road and stronger focus there?
Yeah, I'll just chime in real quick too, because we have and I agree 100%, and I think that has become a priority more and more. And it's funny you mentioned this, and while it doesn't directly impact the budget, I just had, we have CARES Act dollars that are coming into our community, and not only the existing mental health issues that we have seen, obviously, as anticipated, an increase in these concerns. And I had a conversation actually with the chairman of our finance committee at the county board, Ken Harris, Chief of Staff Nick Palmer, and the budget director. And I sat down with them with the CARES Act, and I don't know if anyone else listened, because that money, that $120 million is going to our community throughout Will County. And I don't know if anyone had listened to that committee, but they did a percentage. There was a suggestion by one of the board members of how to divide that money. And, they put over half of it to local government for COVID-related cares. And I went there just to say that I strongly disagreed with that was how the money should be prioritized. I went in there to fight, and I think they were unaware of the things that we could put that money for. I went in there to fight for areas for our community centers, for our mental health issue, our substance abuse, and for our small businesses. Again, many of our businesses we know had to close their doors. Some had to make great changes to comply. And so mental health is just one aspect that I hope that the county board uses the CARE dollars for. I think our community needs should be a priority. But again, I can't tell you the exact number in the budget that was put towards mental health issues, but I think there is no argument that Illinois needs to make that a priority, continue to make that a priority.
All right, thank you for that. Got one more other quick question before we move on to the next topic. You mentioned about, not making the cuts. One of our attendees asked if there were other revenue ideas shared outside of borrowing and potential tax increases. I know there, obviously, I think everybody knows one of the big, assumptions, hopes is the passing of the graduate income tax in November. But was there any other discussion on any other outside possible revenue streams?
Yeah, there were. I mean, it wasn't a big, so yeah, this budget too did not reflect the assumption that the revenue, the graduated income tax would pass. That it was separate from this, so we did not include the anticipated dollars. Or I will tell you, one day I was on that, they went through a list of possible revenue items, and again, there was just not an appetite to address that as well. I think, again, because of what is currently going on, the idea to increase fees, to look for other revenues, I think would just be as difficult as making cuts to certain of our most needed agencies. So while they were brought up, there was not a lot of push for our normal areas of opportunity to create more revenue.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's move on then. We've got a couple more topics to go through here. If we can quickly talk a little bit about workers' comp. There's a commission that had come out and then that was reversed. I think in the end, it sounds like there was a good bipartisan agreement to where we landed on workers' comp for essential versus non-essential workers, and kind of putting that burden of proof back in there for people that do contract the virus in the workplace. Can you talk just quickly about how that went down and the final agreement on that? Senator, you want to kick it off? Go ahead.
Okay, I'll do that. And
Uh-oh. I think we've lost.
Senator, you're on mute.
I got on mute again. It went. I hit mute and I walked. It hit over there. Again, I wasn't part of the discussion to get to the end product of that. I know there was concern, obviously, about the initial expectation. From what from what I've seen, again, because it did have support, was that they were able to reach a decision and allowed more of our, I don't know if it's, more responsibility on the employee or less responsibility on the employer in regard to, and I'm trying to pull up the exact, sorry, I'm using my phone here, and I'm trying to pull up exactly some of the points that was resolved. But am I missing your question here? Do you want to just know the process, or what did you help me out here, Mike? I'm sorry.
I think originally it was that any employee could walk in, say, I have the virus, now I'm automatically going to get workers' comp, and it was just an automatic. And my understanding is, the new agreement is that will be the case for essential frontline nurses, police, and that was something that we had always agreed with, that they could receive that. It was, for the person that's working, in a different office or company setting. Could have been with a group of people over the weekend, and they walk in on Monday and they have or 5 days later and they have a fever, and it's a lot at work, but no, they spent all weekend in large groups. So, and I know now it opens up, a business can now say, no, there is not that proof, and challenge that claim then.
Exactly. You have a rebuttal. And again, now it is for our frontline workers employed by police, fire personnel, emergency, medical, paramedics, and again, people that we may expect to have to, because of their job, expose themselves. And we did allow for our businesses a means of rebuttal. So again, and that's just, and again, that's the result of people like you doing your work and allowing us to hear and coming to the table and saying, listen, we get it. We know this is an issue, but help us out a little bit. And I think, again, I think the end goal too, and again, and I'm not just trying to be fluffy with all this. And, you know, and again, I can only speak for the Senate. I think a lot of this, and I heard this from my Republican counterparts, some of it is just, hey, we agree with you. We like these steps. We appreciate you listening, even with the budget, but we're just not going to vote for it. I mean, it always comes back, unfortunately, to a full circle to politics. But again, that was a result of people communicating to us. And again, Natalie and I will always tell you, you know, we go down to Springfield, but we know we have to come back home to you, and we have to sit on Zoom calls and talk to members of the chamber. So we really appreciate always the input. We can, any legislation can happen. And sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it happens slowly. And when it happens, like the way it did, we can get to results that are understandable. Maybe not make people ecstatic, but understandable. So that's a lot of your pushback. So we appreciate your help with that.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the open ears as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's, if we can, I'll pivot here and move on to Leader Manley to talk about, if you don't mind, the decision for mail-in ballots and the process that's going to go through, and maybe clear up some potential confusion if people are actually going to get a ballot in the mail or if it'll be a request and how many times that's going to come to them.
No, but working hand in glove with our county clerk and the concerns, I'm going to tell you, we are very fortunate to have Lauren Staley-Ferry as our county clerk. She gets it. And she has worked with us very closely, because it all comes down to the availability of resources. Does, you know, the money, who's going to pay for this? What are we going to do? So we worked very closely with her. Lauren has figured out, they did a lot of calculations on the front end, and we were in constant contact over this. So I admittedly don't know the bill inside and out, and will tell you that some of the concerns people had is that now the clerk is going to be forced to mail an application. They're going to mail an application. I guess I can divulge this. She came up with a great way to do this where it wouldn't cost the taxpayers in Will County anymore. The clerk has to mail out a card, a voter card, every 2 years by statute. And since the General Assembly has mandated that everybody should receive an application, not a ballot, but an application for a ballot, Lauren, in her infinite wisdom, I'm pretty proud of this, and she's amazing, is going to mail the application with her mailing that she has to mail anyways. So it won't cost the citizens in Will County anymore, and it will fulfill her obligation to the change in the law. So I think I've heard from a lot of constituents, Mike, over time that, you know, they want to go to online voting and all these other things, but I just don't think we're there yet. Our systems, people are uncomfortable with the security and what that could potentially mean. And we've seen voter tampering in the past. I don't think we have to look very far to have seen that happen on a national level. And so I think we need to be careful going forward with that. We also, part of that bill was to, and this, by the way, is just for this year, just for the 2020, November 3rd, 2020 election. So it's temporary. It's 100% geared, contrary to all the conspiracy theories, to keep people safe. It's a public health issue. So if we have no options, if we're not invited to take different steps, and we all want people to vote, if we're not able to take other steps, and people don't know, not everybody, we're in the bubble. Jennifer and I talk about this all the time. People that don't do this for a living, that aren't part of a chamber, that aren't part of a government, that are kind of just living their lives, you know. And it hasn't been that long ago that I can totally relate to it. I was, you know, doing accounting work, and none of this was my reality. And you have to provide them with the information. So one of the other things we did to help ensure public safety is make it a school holiday. Am I saying that right, Jen? Basically, the polling places now will be in what I've always been a proponent of, a public building, something we've all paid for that we can use to vote in. I don't know why that hasn't been done before. I would like to see that go on permanently, but it's just for this year. So, and with that come dollars to help with the cleaning before and after of, we don't want the schools to have, any kind of virus problems, God knows. But so all of that was included in that bill as well. Am I missing anything, Jen, that would be a highlight?
No, and again, most of the controversial stuff was permissive in there, like lockbox and like that. And actually, it's not a school holiday; it's a state holiday.
State holiday. Okay, good. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for that update. All right, if we can move on, I'd like to ask you about, and not so much about what had happened because that situation has come and gone, but the JCAR decision where there was a threat of those businesses that were not following along with the governor's orders. They're opening. There was the threat of jail time or large fines, and obviously for businesses that are struggling at that time that wasn't accepted. I would say widely accepted. I don't know that it was really accepted at all. I think it was great that it was overturned, and like I said, that's all done. But going forward, there was a lot of talk, and I believe there's a bill or a committee that was started up now. I believe it's a 14-person committee or commission that will look at any future orders or anything related to COVID going forward. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I can tell you how it was handled on the House floor. So two of our members, Representative Hurley, Representative Halpin, Representative Petty, were all on JCAR. And many of us reached out in advance saying, we don't want these rules to go through. So even though the governor is aligned with our party, we don't always agree. And I thought this was a problem. And so in addition to them voting to not uphold that emergency order, we also brought it to the floor. So when we caucused on the first day, I asked the question to the members, who thinks it's a good idea for our business owners to face jail time? Who thinks it's a good idea to do this to people that have been struggling, trying to, keep their heads above water? I'm telling you, not one Democrat, believe it or not one of us wanted to do this. And so there was huge support for overturning that rule.
I'm going to add one little thing too. They did, and again, I wrote letters to JCAR too, and I was under the, I had a lot of us over in the Senate had the same mentality. Again, we're struggling already. To make it a criminal offense just seemed appalling to a lot of us. They did give an alternative. We were presented with an alternative to make it a civil fine. And again, I think the appetite was what our small businesses have suffered enough. The pressure, we did put a lot of pressure on the governor's office to not push that. Ironically, the Chicago Tribune criticized us for not getting it done. But here's the reality of it. There are concerns. I like to have faith that businesses are going to do the best they can. They want to protect the safety of their customers. Also, ironically, I went to a store the other day, and it was a hair salon to pick up something, and none of them were following it too. So, I mean, it's like we try to help, but again, you're always gonna, you're gonna always have a few people who aren't gonna follow it, and then it kind of trickles. It's gonna trickle to other people, and it's gonna come back. Well, listen, we gave you the benefit of the doubt. Unfortunately, there's good players and there's bad players, and as most laws occur, they're there to go after the bad apples. And so I think strong messages from the chambers and to your, it's almost like peer pressure. You got to say, hey, we've escaped criminal, we've escaped civil penalties. Really, the health department has a lot of say. The health departments have a lot of control in these, especially businesses that require licenses from or oversee from our health department. And even then with conversations, we don't want to punish businesses. We want you to open your doors. We want you to run. We want to get our nails done, our hairs done. We want to walk into the stores as well. We're not trying to punish that, but we really need the peer pressure of the business community to say, hey, we need you to follow these rules. So 5 months from now, we're not in the same predicament again. So, but again,
by contrast, my hair salon, they were all masked up, and we had to get our temperature taken when we walked in. We had to hand sanitize before we walked in the door. It was well done. And so I have a lot of confidence in our local chamber business owners that they're going to do the right thing. But if you're doing the right thing, if you're not doing the right thing, someone's going to call. I mean, you run the risk. You got to follow the rules. We've done our part. Now we need you guys to help do your part and encourage your maybe salons that aren't following the rules to do what they're supposed to do.
I'm going to interject here that it wasn't mine, but I wasn't in Will County. I was stopping somewhere to give something, and I was. You
didn't shop in Will County?
I wasn't shopping. I said I was in an adjoining county to give somebody something, so it was not Will County.
Okay. Well, just please try to follow the rules and encourage your other members to do the same.
Well, thank you, both of you, for your support on that issue. And yes, we do encourage our members to follow the rules all the time, especially because a lot of them have brought up the issue and the fear of liability protection, and that's only going to go as far as following the rules. So thanks for bringing that up as well. We'll go through a couple things really quick. We've got about 10 more minutes, so it can be respectful of everybody's time. If you could just really quick touch on a topic that was brought up a lot, rent and mortgage assistance. I don't think any specific laws were passed, but we did hear that there was a little bit of money put into the budget to maybe help with programs that are already in place. If you could really quickly touch on that topic.
Yeah, and the CARES Act, I have to find it because again, I went and I hope that you get involved in the CARES Act dollars I encourage the people at the meeting I was at to reach out to the chambers in regards before they allocate any money. I wanted them to have a panel so you could share with them some of your needs and how some of this CARE dollars could be used. And what I'm going to find out what did you ask for? I included in Will County for rent and mortgage assistance. But at the state level, there was about $1 billion put aside for Housing Development Authority branch for rent and mortgage assistance. And again, I surely hope that Will County will take some of the $120 million that they received and do the same for us locally. Because you remember, we're in a unique situation. We got money allocated as a collar county directly to us. Many of these programs are they're going to prioritize people outside of the collar counties and outside of Chicago because they are more dependent on the state. So again, I hope that the Will County Board sees fit to allocate more than I think the smallest percentage they have. I really hope the majority of the dollars that are given in the CARES Act go back out to the community. Truthfully, the biggest, with our local governments, if the CARE money can't help them with revenue, they honestly don't have a lot of expenses related to it. Definitely not over 55% of $120 million. Even the county does it. They can recognize that. So, I think a lot of those monies can help our child care centers, our small business, rent, our substance abuse centers, some of our non-for-profits. And I know they're looking over it right now. But again, I would recommend that you insert yourself in those conversations. But I don't need to tell you that, Mike.
Yep, thank you. Yes, definitely the plan. I believe it's 20% of that 120 million are going to go to businesses. So make sure that it's spent wisely. Yes, and more, right?
Tell me a lot more.
You know what, I'll pause really quick to ask if anybody else has any questions, if they will please insert those into the chat box, and we'll get those out quickly. As people are typing, if they're going to add though, maybe we can leave on this last topic is a look forward, whether it's in the veto session, if there is going to be a veto session in person, or how, you know, that's probably an unknown and how that's going to work out maybe. But, you know, looking forward, you know, a lot of topics that come up in our circles, property tax, ethics reforms, things like that. What do you see going forward?
I know in the Senate that we voted in our rules because unlike our local government, for some reason, we cannot meet virtually. So a lot of it, why we did not, you know, our local governments conducted meetings virtually. We are not able to. The only way we could do that was if we changed statute. There was not an appetite to do that. So in the Senate, we changed our rules. And so we can, and it's not a complete, we can have committees now by virtual resources. Obviously, we can't have session. So I anticipate us having veto session. I do. You know, we have been given the calendar. How that's going to look like is unknown. You know, I always think there's people have hope that they're going to get specific legislation passed. Again, because of the other things that are kind of roadblocking us to be able to focus on certain things. I don't know if it's going to actually happen. I know ethics reform was a big one that people were disappointed that we did not get to. I know there was some task force that they were expecting some reports that we did not get to. You know, and it seems like we can't, you know, we got through this session, and then I think the hope was to kind of focus on that. And then obviously the political unrest we are facing right now has created another focus. And, you know, I don't like to say we get easily sidetracked because that's not it, but we have to deal with, sometimes we have to prioritize. And right now, where that's obviously a priority, something else has become more important. And so I think we will get to them. I'm not part of the ethics commission. Leader Manley may be able to address that a little bit more, but we're all hopeful to get things back to normal.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Ethics Commission. I don't know. We meet virtually on the commission. Our work continues, so there's no worry about that. We were criticized for not having any kind of ethics reform. That doesn't mean it's not forthcoming. But again, to actually be able to vote on changes, we'd have to be in the Capitol. We'd have to be in Springfield. So we were unable to allow a non-Springfield based legislative session. But the work continues, and I don't know if we'll go back. I don't know. Jen's pretty hopeful about this. I don't want one more surprise. I don't want anything else happening. So I'm ready to go. I'm not enjoying the COVID test that I have to take. I don't know how many of you have had one, but they're unpleasant. I said, how bad could it be? They're not cutting me open. It wasn't great. So we have to have one when we go and when we come back, and we have to self-quarantine for 14 days. So it impacts a lot, but I'm ready to go should we be called back. I don't know that there's going to be much for us to override as far as vetoes go, which is what we experienced last veto session. There wasn't a bunch, but like Senator said, there might be other people. Veto session is not just for overriding vetoes. It's an ability to bring legislation, and a lot of people are planning for it. Can I just say thank you to you, Mike, before we go, and Jen, for your outreach, your advocacy, your constant keeping us informed. It's huge. It really helps. It helps us to make decisions. Thank you for being available when I call or text. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I think it's a partnership with the chamber is like the perfect relationship because you represent your members, and we do agree, obviously, on certain things. We can get things done together, and I think maybe in the past we haven't always felt that way. But I know that Senator Bertino-Tarrant and I value our relationship and the information that comes from the Joliet area chamber. So thank you both.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you again to both of you. As I said and mentioned earlier about working together, even though don't always see eye to eye on specific issues. Is not every issue. It may be sometimes a small amount of issues, but I think the most important thing is to have a back and forth dialogue and understanding where each side is coming from, and the willingness to work through those issues and hopefully come to a common conclusion that benefits both sides as much as possible. So we value your relationship. We do have a great group of senators and representatives. I talk to other chambers a lot of times, and their representatives do not talk to them on phone or show up in person in events. So we appreciate your activity with us and with our chamber members. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, I don't see any other further questions. I know we covered a lot of information and topics today, so I think we will end it there today. I want to say thank you again, not only for both of your time, but for the time of our attendees joining us today. We appreciate all the information that you brought to us, and all the information, again, that your offices share back with us. So we can't always put out information just unknowingly, so we do appreciate the info share back and forth. And then just really quickly, a thank you again of our sponsor today, Delaney and Bourne. You can find them and contact them through our member directory, through our website, www.jolietchamber.com. I want to remind two people that this was recorded today, so we'll have this if you want to share this with any associates that may have missed out to hear these
Did I
topics.
swear? I didn't swear during this thing, right? Okay, cool. Thank God.
We can talk about possible edits if
I don't think I swore. I don't think I did this time.
No, I think everything went well. We did this back in December after the veto session. I thought it went very well then, and I think this format works out good to share information and take questions. So.
And I also tried to say thank you, but that darn mute button got me. So thank you very much, and thank you for the supportive and kind words, Natalie. That means a lot.
Okay, with that said.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jen. Thank you to the members for being interested.
Absolutely.
Invite us back anytime. Thank you.
All right, we'll take you up on that offer. All right, with that said, we want to wish everybody a wonderful rest of the day, and